Question 6. I'm not sure which exam this is from exactly, but let's carry on. The team working on the SQL database developed the pseudocode below. The algorithm reads a list of current appointment IDs from a file and then checks if a new appointment can be made. Each appointment data item has an ID value that uniquely identifies each appointment. This ID is an integer and is created by joining the year, month, day, hour, and minute of the appointment together. An appointment for 9:30 on the 5th of November 2021 will have the ID 2021 11 05 0930. Each appointment has a fixed duration of 30 minutes. Fill in the missing lines of the pseudocode below so that the algorithm correctly determines if a new appointment can be made. Okay, let's have a look at the pseudo. We have a begin function call, and it's passing in a new appointment ID, so that would obviously be something like whatever this ID is. We've got a comment here saying it reads all the upcoming appointment IDs from their file into an array. So we don't know anything about that file, but it's reading from that file. IDs are stored in ascending order. Yeah, that's very interesting. That might be relevant in a second. So here below we have a current app appointments ID array, empty, and we're filling it with reading all the appointments from that file and putting them into there. And apparently they're ordered, or somehow are they ordered, or it doesn't matter, we don't need to know. They're just going in there and they're going to be ordered in ascending order from smallest to largest. We're also setting an appointment exist variable to false, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking to see if we can find that appointment in there that we pass in. We've got a high appointment excuse me, variable, and we're setting that to the current appointment ID, so that's the array dot length. So let's say that it's 100, there's 100 appointments in that file and they've been put into the array. That means the length of the array would be 100. So 100 would go into high appointment, and the low appointment is obviously going to be 0 because the array starts at 0. So 0 to 100, that's the length. Well, that's the boundary, the range of the value, the indexes in the array. Now we're going down here and we're going to search through all appointment IDs, setting app exists to true if we find it, while app exists equals false, and while the high appointment is more than the low appointment. First thing we do in here is, this might be a little bit confusing to some of you, but we set a mid appointment value, and we set that to high appointment plus low appointment divided by 2 and round down, because that'll be, if it's an odd number, that'll be a decimal. So we get a midpoint. So to me, there's two things that have hinted here that we need to consider. We're searching for something, so we need to search. We are dealing with an array of sorted items in ascending order, so that's the second thing. And they've given us a midpoint in the array. So that's three things. Those three things tell me that they're probably expecting us to write in pseudocode a binary search, because the prerequisites for a binary search is that the array of items you're searching through is ordered, and you start at the midpoint and you halve it every time you go, and you either take the lower side or the higher side based on the value that you're comparing with. So how would we write that in pseudocode now that we know we need to do that? Well, first thing is we need to find out, as soon as we get in here, we're going to say, I'm going to check if so we're going to say if statement, if what is it called again? What do they call it? They called it new app. If the new appointment ID equals the current app ID and at the position of the midpoint, you can't see it, let me move it down. So mid, it's capital M. Then we want to set app exists. For some reason, if we say that the array is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and the midpoint for 7 is the fourth value or the third value, and we put in that third value, then we found it straight away, right, at that midpoint. That midpoint would be the existing one. So if we find it, again, we've got to set this appointment exists to true and then exit the loop. This is a bit hard to do indentation, so I'm just going to use spacing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if first of all, if that midpoint isn't the actual appointment ID that we've passed in and then we're trying to check, then move on and say else if, because now we're going to check if the new appointment ID is more than current appointment IDs at the midpoint, then we are going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are going to modify these depending on which side of the midpoint. We're going to modify the high or the low. So if we are, let's think about this. If our one that we've passed in is more than, higher, so to the right of the midpoint, then we need to discard the left side of the array, meaning this low value needs to become the midpoint, mid plus 1. And this will make sense after we write the pseudocode. I'll go through it with you. And then we need to have one more if else to say if the opposite ID is less than the current app IDs at the current midpoint, then we are going to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to set the high app point to the current midpoint minus 1. So this is, we're going to discard everything to the right and then halve the first half of the array of values again. Because remember, that's how binary search works. Now, let's have a look at this. That's it. That's all we have to do, because then at that stage, if it goes into one of these if statements here, it's going to loop up and then check if that midpoint that we have, because it's going to calculate that midpoint again based on the high and the low, and we've changed the low and the high based on whether that's above or below the midpoint. It's going to check if the new point now is the actual appointment ID. And if it's not, then it's going to keep looping until it gets to the end. And if it does find one, then it's going to say it exists. So let's think about this. This whole thing up here with the IDs is kind of confusing, right? This is sort of irrelevant to the logic of this pseudocode down here, because we could create a list of numbers that say, we're going to say appointments coming from 4, and we'll just go in order: 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, and let's say 10. Let's say these are all the appointment times, and they're in the file. This is the file. This is what the file looks like. So when the file is read, these numbers go into current app IDs. So that's the array. This is what this array here looks like right now, and it's ordered from smallest to largest. And our new appointment ID, let's say for instance we are searching for, let's go with 9. We're searching for, we want to make an appointment at 9, and we don't know that 9's already in the appointments file, but we're going to find out through this algorithm. We know, we can clearly see it's here, but let's say that this, this list of numbers was these convoluted, confusing looking numbers, and there were many of them, like hundreds of them. You're not going to be able to sit there and find it. So this, for simplicity's sake and running through this pseudocode, this might make a little bit more sense. We come into the loop. We know that the app exists equals false. So we know that's up here. So we're going to go to the next thing. High appointment is more than low appointment. And we know that this is going to be equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this is going to be 7. And that's going to be 0 still. So is 7 more than low appointment? Yes, it is. So we're going to come into the next line and enter the loop. Mid appointment time or position, this should be, is going to be 7 plus 0 divided by 2. So it's basically 7 divided by 2, which is 3.5. But we're in a round down function. So 3.5 rounded down is going to be 3. So this first midpoint value is going to be 3. And if we now go into our if statement, if new appointment ID, so that's 9, this is equal to 9. I don't know why this is so hard with the mouse. If 9 is equal to, and remember this is, we're looking at inside of the array here, at position 3. So this is position 3. This is 0. I'll do this in a different color actually. This is 0. That's 1, 2, 3, because that's the midpoint, right? We've selected the midpoint. 4, 5, or calculated the midpoint. 6. So, where are we again? If 9 is equal to the value at midpoint 3, which is equal to 7, then the appointment exists. In this case, 9 does not equal 7, does it? So this is not going to get into here and update this app exists to true, which means we're probably going to be looping through this again. Let's go to the next part of this, if, else if. If 9 is more than that same value, because we're just doing the same value, then yes it is. So we're going to go into this. Low appointment, which is at 0, is now going to be midpoint, and the midpoint was 3 in this first loop, so it's going to be 3 plus 1. So this is going to be, the new low point is going to be 4. And this doesn't apply because we're going out again. So now the new midpoint, the new low point, now we're going to loop again, and we're going to make a new midpoint based on the new low point and the new high point. So the high point is still 7. We didn't adjust that, but the new low point is 4. So what's 7 plus 4? That's 11. 11 divided by 2. That's 5.5. If you round that down, that's 5. So the new midpoint now in the array that we're going to be searching is at position 5, which is 9. So if we up, this is now, that midpoint is now equal to 5. This is going to be 5. And we know that current app IDs at position 5 is actually equal to 9. So now we can say if new app ID, which we passed in as 9, is 9 equal to 9? Yes, it is. So it's going to come in here and it's going to say, hey, true. And it's not going to do any of these because this is all part of an if-else selection. It's going to skip out on that. It's going to come back to the while, and it's going to say, this is going to be now true. So it's going to break this condition and break the loop. And then it's going to exit, and this is going to be true, and then it's going to return false. And that false means, yes, we have found it, so we can't make that booking, I'm assuming, in the greater scheme of this whole application, because this is just a snippet. So hopefully that makes sense. That would be the pseudocode that would need to be inserted in this position.